right, welcome to another episode. Today, in this episode, we are diving into Seth's teachings about the nature of the ego, which has gotten a very bad rap on this planet, and what he calls the sinful self, which is actually at the root of many of the personal, family, community, and global geopolitical problems on the planet.
Whoa.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
Heavy
right.
topic.
And we're going to handle all that in that, right?
Yes, in 45 minutes, we'll solve it all.
We'll actually cover a lot of ground, actually. So maybe let's talk about portions of the self or the personality and also the ego, which has somewhat of a tarnished name in today's popular culture.
Oh, yeah. Well, not just today's, like many spiritual traditions and religions, is, basically you want to kill off the ego, or you certainly have to transcend or rise above it. I mean, it's not anything that you can take with you on your path to spiritual enlightenment.
Right.
In that viewpoint, it's wrong. It's a misunderstanding. It's distortion. And let's see if we can.
Oh, in popular culture today, it's like, oh, what an ego.
Yeah.
Look at her or look at him. Like, he's so egoic, he can't get out of it. He thinks pretty highly of himself, right? That kind of stuff.
But if he really thought highly of himself,
well,
it would be different. So what is your understanding of how Seth talks about what we refer to as the ego, and how does Seth refer to?
Okay, so let's put it into kind of a backdrop or context so that we can understand it a little bit more. So we've talked about how we're multidimensional personalities and trying to expand our concept of ourselves. We also have a waking personality, which is composed of what people would call the ego. But there's other portions of the waking personality too. So there's also a subconscious, a little bit below consciousness, and some people would say, well, you also have an unconscious. And according to Seth, which is, I believe, pretty accurate, the subconscious and the unconscious are actually quite conscious. Like, they are actually quite aware. And he's described another portion, which is called the inner self, which is a part of our personality. And we are fragments or projections into waking reality from the inner self. We actually are our inner selves, but the inner self cannot totally project itself into waking reality. So there's another portion of it that exists simultaneously with our waking personality.
Right. So, as you're explaining this, I'm thinking like those of our listeners who might be very interested or oriented to like psychology, psychiatry, the way that Seth explains the nature of the identity, the personality is really, it's so constructive and positive and holistic. So you are this vast multidimensional identity, and
right.
Then you have part of that within that. So you think of it more as like interpenetrating fields or spheres or
right.
gestalts of identity. So within that is like the inner self that is maybe more focused into physical reality systems, and then
inner reality
and inner reality, and your inner self will project form, like, okay, so we're looking at overarching, okay, what do I want to learn through physical reality? What are the things I need to develop? So I need to generate a new lifetime to work on these things or learn these things. So a personality will arise to be incarnated. It'll project into a new lifetime that walks around calling itself Dave Selak or Michaela Stetler. This is my story. I was born here. I grew up here, blah, 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 blah. I was born female. I was born male, or whatever your gender persuasion might be, right? And then that personal identity has to have a conscious mind and an ego. This is the part of the multidimensional identity that deals with objectified physical reality, that has to be oriented to this plane of reality in order to function here.
Absolutely. Like, for example, just as a descriptor, so we'll talk about the egoic and waking personality. The ego, pretty rational or intuitive or a bit of a mix of both. It's there to help make decisions. It's there to assess reality. It's like, right, I feel something in my stomach. Am I hungry? Yes, I am. It's time to eat.
Right.
So
Local conditions.
local conditions, chicken or fish, you know, or
Chicken,
making,
fish, or veg.
or, you know, you're faced with a number of items. Oh, I see I have a flat on my car. What shall I do? How shall I solve this? So there's a assessing reality, assessing waking reality. But there's a piece to this which is kind of cool. The ego does not have to go it alone. It actually has more resources. The inner self, intuition, feelings, emotion doesn't have to be 100% intellectual and rational. So it has other portions of our waking and non-waking self, the dream state, the inner self. So all these pieces can be used by the ego to help it make judgments and directions and choices.
Exactly. So remember, Seth always says there are no divisions to the self. They're kind of just artificial or for the convention of being able to speak about it. And as far as the portion of the identity that we call ego that is dealing with physical reality, it doesn't have to be set up the way we've conditioned it to be set up. That has to do with belief systems. So the ego can be much more open to intuitional knowledge, guidance from the inner self if we let it. Now, another thing I want to mention here is there is not one ego and that's it. It's not a static aspect of identity. It's constantly forming and reforming. So, for example, the identity or ego identity that you had when you were 6 years old was not the same one when you were 16 or 26 or 56 or whatever
so
age.
So it's dynamic, right?
It's dynamic.
Constantly changing.
Yeah,
constantly being learning and education. So it's not stuck in on pause or freeze frame.
Right. When we consider, actually, when we're talking in this episode, it's really about the nature of identity in a lot of ways. And where does identity arise from? What creates a feeling of security and safety and power and ability with identity? Because this is mostly, again, to do with our attitudes and belief systems. It's not to do with anything intrinsically or programmed. It has to be this way. It can be very different.
It's very flexible, it's dynamic, and you can consciously work with it to change it to actually be not only better, but more encompassing of who and what you really are.
Right.
Because there's a lot of beliefs that we have gained through parents, religions, our culture, that we have assimilated, and some of these are almost, but not quite, invisible. And they actually...
They're such assumptions, you think they're just reality. You don't even question
them. No, that's right.
them.
And they actually have in some cases, many cases actually, a destructive or unconstructive effect on us, and we don't even know it.
Right,
That's what I discovered for myself, at least.
One of the suggestions that Seth has given that I've been working with a lot this year, and to very great practical effect, is that I want my ego identity to join with my inner self and to be open and receptive to all guidance from my inner self.
I do that too, but in a different language.
Oh, let's hear yours.
Well,
you probably have a nice, clearer, simpler one. I tend to get a little too wordy.
I don't know.
Even with my own suggestions.
No, it's whatever works. And, we got to be able to change whatever it is that we're trying to do. The one I use is, and before I go to sleep, is within the inner reality, within the dream state, framework 2, we call it sometimes, is I am totally open and welcoming of coaching, in all areas of my life.
Love that. So I want to share
Coaching and training.
Right, coaching and training. So from working with the suggestion of really wanting to join my conscious outer human identity
Yeah.
more with my inner self. So I'm
I like yours too, by the
dissolving
way.
these barriers. Thank you.
Yeah.
Is the practical effect of that is that I have so much more intuitional guidance. I get so much more inner knowing. I have so much more telepathy, which, if you've been watching these podcasts,
Is that good?
it is. It's very helpful.
Yeah.
It's extremely helpful. And, in the act of trying to kind of grow and build the Seth Center, it gives me so much more capacity, and I'm not just reliant on my like little rational mind which is operating on a limited data set compared to my inner self has an unlimited data set.
I know what you mean. I'd like to comment on that because
Okay.
mine's the same, but I would pick a different way of expressing mine. And it's kind of like there's an ease of life. And I realize that I don't have to intellectually and rationally figure everything out.
Right,
And
right.
I've learned to just trust my inner spontaneity. So the impulses that come up to me, like today, call Harry, make a reservation, do this, do that, and I follow it. And what I found, which is kind of cool, I want to see what you think. It's so much easier.
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
like I'm not trying to manipulate my way through shit.
Have to like figure everything out. I mean, and it's a process to retrain ourselves to do that. Now,
Yeah.
as you follow this overall trend of evolving and expanding the ego so that it is joined with much more your inner self and isn't operating isolated on its own, which creates a lot of fear and insecurity, right? This is like a lot of where if you have that feeling of connection with your inner self and inner guidance from your inner self, you don't feel alone here. It's not as scary, right? Because you have connection to something larger that's
Absolutely.
guiding you.
Yeah.
So
it becomes an adjunct to the ego.
right.
It's like, and the ego becomes actually stronger and more flexible because of it, because you realize, I don't have to solve that one rationally. In fact, I don't even have to solve it right now. But the ego generally, like, I'll use myself, like, have to solve this problem. Boom, 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 boom. Try to figure it out.
Work.
Try to figure
Think
it
it
out.
through,
And then you
think it
can't figure
through.
it out. You try it again. I'm going to try to figure it out. Can't figure it out. Like, you try that 4 times. You walk away frustrated because you can't figure it out. But the ego is never meant to try to do that heavy lifting kind of work anyway.
Yeah, so I don't know if we want to actually get into it in this episode because it's pretty like
What?
deep material
Like what?
about how did the ego arise in the first place? Because we have to have a portion of the self
I agree.
dealing with local conditions.
There's
a
too
bit-
many complexities, and honestly, I'm not ready.
Yeah,
I'm not ready to
but
describe
I want to
that.
give a little bit of indication. Basically, again, you can't try to get to some greater, higher state of living by killing off or destroying any part of the self. So the issue is that it's been forced to operate in an isolated fashion and in a very narrow fashion. So we want to have the intellect and the intuitions integrated hand in hand with each other,
Right.
not
So
isolated.
tell me why the ego has a bad name in certain circles.
Well, because it's can have this false conception that the ego identity, the human identity with your personality is a block, a hindrance to spiritual growth. And that, if you are going to be reaching some state of enlightenment, you have to overcome your ego. And again, this
Lose
is
yourself.
it's like, no, you have to expand it. But you can't, some part of you still needs to deal with, paying the bills, driving the car, buying the groceries. Like
Yeah. So what's all this talk about? Look, I'm asking. These are called Dorothy Dix questions in my country. It's why is there such a movement around getting rid of the ego or the self?
I just think it's a lot of misunderstanding and distortion. So that natural intrinsic drive we all have for, maturing and growing and evolving spiritually, it's actually this concept that you can't trust the self, that you're born in some way sinful, or you have to work out your bad karma. It's part of, again, these artificial divisions and false dualities. So now we have right, wrong, good, bad, light is good, dark is bad, night is bad, day is good. It's, again, all of these artificial divisions. So I think what has happened, like, the ego identity is only insecure and paranoid when it's forced to operate in isolation, not as knowing it's part of this larger whole that you have lots and lots of guidance and love and resources to tap on. So I think it comes more from that. And then, you think you're just, whatever job description or personality description I could give of you or myself, but we're way more than that. We're so much more than all of that, and we have unlimited potential. So it's, again, this false understanding of a limited, isolated self, and this could get all into like the difference between nature, nurture, fate, destiny. These are big, heavy topics, but what I think we would really like to do today is also go into how these misunderstandings of the nature of the human identity, human nature, because it ties in with this false understanding of ego. So we have this also false belief that there's something intrinsically bad, wrong, shameful, unworthy, unspiritual, unclean, impure about human nature.
Yeah. So there's been this there's this thing that one part of ourself is good, maybe, or at least it's okay, but this other part is not that good. In fact, evil, wrong, sinful, it does bad stuff, and therefore it taints the rest of us. So there was this concept, the sinful self that we're talking about, is what Seth called, it's a psychological belief construct. It's like, here's how I like to look at it.
How do you look at it?
If you know what a beaver dam is, it's like beaver dams are these logs. These, beavers, nibble down these trees, and they interlock them. They block up a little stream, and all of these logs come together to form this dam. Some of the water gets through, most of it doesn't, and it creates a pond. So the sinful self is a bit like there's a bunch of beliefs all tied together that serve to basically repress us in certain ways. And repress us not only from feelings, but also from knowing who and what we really are. So what are some of these beliefs and ideas? Well, you've mentioned a little bit. The self is bad or evil. And that construct, it's interesting, that permeates actually all cultures. It's not just was it Thomas Aquinas, I think? Or no, St. Augustine? So, I can't remember. I think it's St. Augustine. But anyway, he came up with this amazing scheme, this amazing program to help people become dependent on the religion of the day, and that in that era, the Catholic Christian religion, which was, you were born bad, you have original sin on your soul, and the only way to fix that is you have to join our church, and we'll help you, essentially, is what he said. So
there's a racket if I ever heard one.
You know what? It kind of makes sense. It's kind of like saying, hey, you don't have this, you need this to fix it.
Right.
And it was and people over time, not even over time, it doesn't take long, to believe in that kind of thing, especially if everyone around you believes it.
So here's some of what happens when you take on whatever version of it is, because it's not just like Judeo-Christian or
Oh, no.
any biblical. It's like the same thing in Eastern religions, just in new clothes or different clothes. It's the
Yeah.
same storyline, that you have to be vigilant about whatever that badness or wrongness or shamefulness
Yeah.
is in you.
Yeah.
But if you really people can't
There's a tie-in
tolerate.
with science, by the way.
Yeah,
We can't forget to remember
right.
this.
Survival of the fittest. It's a dog eat dog world. Human nature, like, it'll just
The
go to
weak get killed. The
chaos.
weak should be killed,
Yeah.
or are killed.
Yeah, you get like eugenics theories like that. But what happens is, if you accept as a truth about yourself that there's something basically bad, wrong, evil, dark, sinful, unacceptable, unlovable, unworthy, right? That is pretty much intolerable to live with. It's anti-life. So now you are going to be having to repress and control yourself. You have a lot of guilt, but at the same time, you're also going to become masterful at projecting this out onto other people. So I don't have this unwanted quality that would make me bad, wrong, unlovable, unacceptable, but they do. It's out there on those other people. And then
races, other
yeah,
races,
fill
other
in
countries.
fill in the race, the religion, the ethnicity, the socio status, whatever that you want. It's going to be projected onto other people. And because this is such a bad, unwanted quality, then we can hate it and reject it and justify torture, violence, genocide to kill it off. Because
And not only that, but we can torture and self-flagellate ourselves, punish ourselves in so many different ways, through events, relationships,
health problems,
health
financial
issues.
problems.
Absolutely.
So anything that when we're carrying this, what I would consider false guilt, artificial guilt, how Seth calls it, the thing with guilt is that it's a two-sided coin. There's a corollary. You cannot have guilt without
punishment.
So,
Self-punishment.
Yeah.
Or punishment being victimized, for example.
Right. And, there's a lot of coping strategies that people will develop in childhood, is like, I'll preempt being punished from the outside. I'll do it to myself. Right.
And
because you've absorbed and accepted these false beliefs about yourself. So it can show up in so many ways of sabotage, of, health issues, of, okay, now I'm reaching a ceiling where it's too good. Now I'll have to lose it all.
Right.
It's so many different ways.
And there's little things that, like little flags, like in your inner reality. Oh, I know I'm a shit. I really am a bad person.
Yeah, all that
like,
critical talk.
Self-critical, like, oh, I can never do anything right. Or, there's another.
Right.
You see people that are openly this way. And
Right.
It's like, kind of scary.
And you
actually.
have to be taught this. This is actually, years ago, I was working with a fascinating man who was a pediatric neurologist, who then went into like top level management consulting. And it was really all about like the emotional brain and relationships, like to create business, have more business success by managing all of this. And he said, if you really want to understand human nature, you look at infants. So they're
That's cool. Yeah.
right. So the drives are for connection, collaboration, creativity, all of that, community,
Curiosity,
play. That is human nature. You have to be taught to hate or self-hate. You have to be taught to try to control or dominate. It's only when the primary drives are being frustrated. So again, all of these distortions about identity and about human nature, whether it's judgments about the ego or these beliefs in what Seth has created this umbrella term he calls the sinful self. The effect of all of that is deep repression. You get all this disowned energy that then you are going to project onto others and turn in on yourself. So what happens, like if we look at this just from a kind of energy point of view, right? Because Seth is always saying that, there's an electromagnetic reality to every thought, emotion that you hold or have, right? So if the nature of energy is to express, right? It's extending outward to fulfill value. Then you have these belief systems around your identity and sinful self that cause the energy to turn back in on itself. You have to repress it. So how much energy does it take for you to repress your natural instincts or impulses because you've been taught not to trust yourself? What happens? You just get tied up in knots.
Yeah. Or it's like that beaver dam. Some water gets through, but not all of it.
Right.
I think I'd be happy to share some examples. Because I think,
let's get into it.
yeah, because otherwise it becomes this intellectual thing, slightly emotional. And when I first came upon this, I thought, I seem okay. And it's true, I am okay. And the other piece and the other side to this is what Seth says is, actually, you are 100% good. You are a good person.
What you are is good.
What you are is
your
good.
nature is good.
Absolutely. All that. So what needs to happen is to deconstruct some of these really crappy beliefs or unconstructive beliefs that we have assumed that are holding us back. So Seth talks about, so what are those beliefs? So Michaela, you mentioned one, guilt about like you may have done some stuff that you're not proud of. You may have, all kinds of stuff.
Or just guilt about natural energy, like your sexual energy.
Yeah, I shouldn't be sexual. Like, that's wrong or that's evil. Let me give you an example. Because I've worked through the sinful self a few times, and I thought, I'm done. It's like, and then guess what? No, I ain't. I'm not done, because I bumped into a feeling, and the feeling was feeling guilty, and the guilt was around my then partner. Her cancer reoccurred, and over the next few months, the process happened, and she died. So, and in that process, some of my friends, were like, so what actually happened was I wasn't able to be there when she died. And I felt guilty about that. Like, the guilt was I should have been there when she died. And I felt guilty. My friends didn't help much, but they brought out, you don't have a sore spot until when someone presses your spot, right? So they pressed the guilt button on me. They said, you should have been there. Why weren't you there? Blah, 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 blah. And I got really pissed, really angry with them. And then the reality was I finally started to process this sinful self and this guilt. And I realized that I did feel terrible about not being there when she died, when she passed. And I use that in a way to be angry with these other people, angry with myself ultimately. And until I processed all of this and start to, dig down a little bit, I realized I was using it to beat myself up. Like, you know what I'm saying? So part of that sinful self construct. So it's kind of, and then once I worked through it, it's like I realized it's like, hey, let yourself off the hook. Like, did you make a mistake? Maybe. Yeah, I did. And but what was the belief? The belief, you should always be there when someone dies if you can. Like, at any rate. So I had to work through some of these beliefs that I held of what a good person was, what a good person does, and if you don't live up to them, well, you're a bad person, right?
Right.
So
right.
This is a mid-level example of a belief that I held that I really had to look at and examine.
Well, this is interesting talking about this because, just this year, we did that first ever course on Seth on health and healing and disease, which I taught. And as I was teaching that class and then the study group afterwards, really looking at what were the sticking points, what were the difficult points for people in being able to heal themselves or apply the teachings. And this kind of pervasive guilt issue was such a common cause. Like I could clearly see that the guilt that they were holding about various different topics, subjects, and just about themselves were actually, because you can't have guilt without punishment, was being turned against themselves. And one of the ways, like let's give some practical like exercises, examples. So if you really want to start to become more conscious of these constructs that you're holding about being inadequate, unlovable, unacceptable, wrong, bad, whatever it is, and these false guilts that you're holding, you can do belief exercises where you're using, a good this or that. A good mother should always and should never. So you do a kind of stream of consciousness thing, like a good
It's
partner.
like you finish the sentence, right?
You finish the sentence and you just do it stream of consciousness. You just don't think about it. Just keep going.
Or if you're not a mother, if you're on the male side, you go, I feel guilty about.
No, I wouldn't even. I mean, you could do it that way.
If you're trying to identify the beliefs that you hold.
Yeah, you can say I feel guilty about, but this is why I did it this way is that because we repress these things, we deny it for ourselves. So if you come at it from this angle, it's a way to really uncover the beliefs that you're that are right there, but you're hiding from yourself. So as a man, like a good boyfriend, a good partner, a good husband should always, and then you fill in the blank, and should never. So whatever the thing is.
So you're going at it from cognitive. I'm going at it from
emotional, right?
Which is, so there, for everyone listening, there's at least two ways to identify. We're both trying to get to identifying the beliefs, right?
Right. The beliefs in that. I mean, I find it's really helpful to take this like multi-pronged approach. Try it different ways. But if you're using, you could just say, oh, I feel guilty about this, or because this is what I'm guilty because of this, or I feel guilty because of that. But sometimes you're not even fully cognizant of it. So that's where you can uncover guilt by using that should always, should never, because then you're going to find the rules, right? Because what's happening with the guilt, you have a set of rules about what you're supposed to do and be. So, for example, one of the students had brought up by a Chinese, she was Chinese, brought up in a very traditional Chinese family. Well, there's all these rules and expectations for how a good Chinese daughter is supposed to be, right? And you always do this and you never do that, and you must do this and you can never do that.
All cultures have those rules,
exactly.
don't they?
I'm just giving an example in this case because, it was, there were a lot of rules and expectations of how she was supposed to be responsible for her mother's well-being and her emotional well-being and serving her mother, and that her mother's life should come first and that you should sacrifice first. It's a lot of kind of old Confucian belief systems. So this exercise, like, she had a hard time doing it. She did not want to look at it because then you have the thing that means you're a bad daughter and you don't love your mother if you don't follow these rules. So now you have all this guilt.
Got it.
And now what do you do with all of that guilt? You must punish yourself in some way.
Right. So ultimately, let's kind of get this train back on the
let's get back on the tracks.
So with this thing that we've identified, so I think people can see now, it's like, oh wow, I do carry some of these beliefs, feelings about myself as a bad person or evil even, or not very good or whatever, and also guilt and punishment. Yeah, I get that. Where we're trying to get to is, if we're trying to get out of the official line of consciousness, right? We need to release ourselves from this self-created prison of beliefs and ideas. And part of that is what we're talking about, the sinful self, the negativeness or evilness of the ego.
The
So,
evility. That's a
because
new
otherwise,
word. Yeah.
we're stuck
Yeah.
in traditional cultural beliefs that are not valid. What you are is what you are is good. You have unlimited energy to create and be who and what you really are, and to form your own reality. But with some of these constructs that we're talking about, the sinful self, the negative ego is bad. I'm really a bad person. I should be punished, essentially. We hold ourselves back.
Right.
So that's what we're on about. That's where we're heading.
That's yes. And
So how do we go about this?
Well, let me just finish and then we go more into it. Along with that too is being able to trust yourself and trust your own nature and trust your impulses, because what this also sets up is now you're going to block impulses.
Because they're wrong or evil.
Right, because you can't trust yourself.
No.
So now you have blocked yourself off from the guidance of your inner self because you can't trust yourself. So you can't trust those inner voices because they have to be wrong or bad.
Yeah.
Because you're wrong and bad.
Yeah. And plus science says, well, survival of the fittest. Anyone is capable of killing and, madness and mayhem. And it's like, when I heard that from my friend, I think like, where do I start with you?
Where do we begin?
Really.
Well, let's talk about that, getting to the practical aspect. So I don't really think there's any way around doing some investigative, like bring a loving a curiosity to your own consciousness, to your own belief systems, because you are not your belief systems. There's something that you hold, that you wear, that you take on. They're meant to be mobile.
I got something.
Oh, yeah.
So I remember this quote. If you want to know what you really think and believe and feel about yourself, what do you think about your friends and people in general?
Right, because we're projecting it
you're
out.
Projecting that
all the time.
on other people. So if you think, people are out to get you, or you can't trust anyone, or, like everything's going to end badly, and blah, 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 all that. I'm using purposefully negative kind of projections here. But you might have a mixed bag of that. But can you imagine what it's like if, everyone is good, everyone is worthy of love and is lovable and so forth, and everyone has an inner self, everyone has, creativity, spontaneity. So everything is good. You are 100% good through and through. Everyone is worthy and deserving person, like all that. Like that sounds like, I know how that sounds like. It sounds, crazy. But we're actually on the other side of that now.
Yeah, you'll have more of those experiences for yourself and attract more people like that to your life. So you have to remember again that belief systems and beliefs are like how we're constructing experience. They're not meant to be rigid and fixed. They're meant to be pliable and changeable. You've changed belief systems over your lifetime. Whatever you grew up with and took on and accepted about your identity, only you have the power and the authority and the right and the responsibility to change your identity, to determine and define your identity for yourself. So processes of working with belief systems, you can start from the emotion side, you can start from the thought side, using dreams to, help me see through the mistakes of the belief systems, negative belief systems I hold about myself, help me see my true natural worth and lovability. Like you can do it. You can use dream state.
It's not hard.
No.
And it doesn't take that long either.
No, you can change this. You can heal it. It's the painful thing is accepting these lies as true about yourself. the
Yeah, there's no need to keep going with it.
no.
And really, here's a great analogy. I like this one because I made it myself. It's Vincent van Gogh.
Okay.
He's a great painter. I love his stuff. I really, the sunflowers, the looking at the, it's starry night. My favorites too. And he did something like, I'll make this up, but it's relatively close. About 800 paintings in a year or two, like boom, just boom. I have to tell you, not all of his stuff is great, right? It's not. Like there's his beginning works is like, oh, that's not that great. Like, and you could look at lots of them. They're not all inspired. So, and we're like that. We're a painter. We're painting our own life. Not all of our works are inspired. It's not all great. It's not all great construction. But some of it really is. Like you did a great job, Michaela, with your life. You created this, you created.
Hey, I created this relationship.
Exactly.
I'm proud of it.
And we're each like that. So it would be like identifying ourselves, which we are, a great painter, a great creator. It would be like identifying ourselves with our worst works, or our works that weren't that great. But really, it's like, which do you want to look at? You decide. And the other one is, you're not saying you're perfect. No one's perfect, right? We don't expect that. But we want to at least put ourselves through the lens, the clear lens of, oh, I am a really good person. I'm excellent, actually. I'm worthy of this. I'm worthy of love. I'm worthy of having this, worthy of having a good job. Like all that stuff. You want to look through that lens rather than the tarnished lens of really kind of some negative, outdated beliefs that, the culture has basically kind of tossed up on and we kind of hold in place.
And what I would recommend for our listeners is definitely the nature of personal reality, because Seth really goes very, very deeply in that book on the nature of identity, belief systems, and has many different methods and processes and exercises that you can use to transform and heal these negative false identities and open up the doors to knowing more the wholeness of yourself rather than some isolated, identity that blocks out a lot of your creativity and wisdom.
Yeah. And we're also needing to look at the construct of the sinful self.
Yes.
And that is located.
Well, it's in a lot of the personal sessions.
It's in the personal sessions, isn't
Right,
it? It was
right.
really kind of private communication between Seth and Jane and Rob.
Right. Trying to help Jane deal with the things that were creating physical problems for her.
If you want to find the references, you will find them.
You can. Well, we can
We
maybe
can
put some
tuck that
notes
in.
in for
We'll
that.
put a note in,
Yeah,
yeah.
we'll put some notes in.
But it's
Well,
really worth looking.
Yeah. So I think we did a pretty good job of touching on and giving the basics of some very, very deep constructs, because in other writings you can read about the rise of self-aware ego consciousness, how that arose, what the purpose of it was, and how we got off track with it. So maybe for future episodes, but it does require a bit of grounding in some of the key principles. But I think we did a pretty good job
It's
for
a good
today.
start.
It is.
We started off sprinting, and there's a lot there. It's really worth doing, like really. Mm-hmm. And I mean, for me, what's happened is it's opened up other portions of myself, released lots of energy, taken down and pushed the bars of this self-constructed prison aside. Mm-hmm. And it's beneficial in so many ways.
Indeed, indeed.
Thanks, Michaela.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you all for listening.
Seth made it clear. You create your own reality. But knowing that and living it are two very different things. How do you actually shift a belief? How do you create your reality in a world that seems filled with limitations? How do you move from understanding metaphysical concepts to experiencing real change? For the first time, the Seth Center has created a course that brings Seth's most essential teachings on manifestation and reality creation into one clear, practical program. This isn't a course in theory. It's a course in transformation. If you want the most comprehensive course on manifestation we've ever created, check out Create Your Own Reality from the Inside Out. It's on demand and self-paced, with a library of guided practices, a full workbook, and everything you need to understand how manifestation really works, step by step through the lens of the Seth material. You can start today at sethcenter.com or learn more using the link below.